Today on the show, we're rediving into the WRLD of Asterix. This is one of the greatest true horror stories to date, with no logical explanation and no one able to solve its mystery. The case was written under the name The Man, and some said it was a ghost. Some even agreed, saying it was a professional criminal. Asterisk, the incident began in the U.S. state of Virginia, specifically at the Colchester Bridge, now known as the Bridge Man. People began to be surprised every now and then by the sight of a young man hanging from the bridge, entrails sticking out in a terrifying manner. Asterisk, the police began investigating the perpetrators of these operations. They began questioning the surrounding residents, all of whom were already established and had established a person who deserved to be dressed as a rabbit. He had been present at the bridge after midnight. With the onset of his appearance, the X-ray killings began. Asterisk, the police intensified their investigations to discover something even stranger. With each new murder, they discovered a group of decapitated rabbits with their entrails sticking out in the vicinity of the foggy area. This was the same method used on humans, which they had suspected was a crime. The bridge asterisk, all these details are documented in major Puerto Rican newspapers. Asterisk, because there's nothing they found in the report that would disguise themselves or these specifications of their actions, suspensions, and distortions. But by going back to the entire history of the region, they discovered that in 1904, there was a psychosocial car. This car was just a car accident, and all the patients on board escaped. The police succeeded in arresting all the patients except for two of them, Marcos and the other, Wilfred Durgoon. The police then began to suspect that one of them was carrying out these operations that were taking over all the patients. The search and investigations were everywhere. But days after the surprise occurred, the police discovered that the two individuals were part of the population structure, and they suspected them, and that one of them was an inhuman. They were found murdered near the bridge, their bodies connected, their limbs hanging out and hanging. He was learning to tell them. The first one starts with the face. The terrifying thing was that when it came to escaping, the police were no longer the same. The man could move in any way, anywhere, and kill them at rest. This began from then on. Looking at the man, he's not a murderer or a criminal. He's not even human. Asterisk, they discovered the picture, but about his most famous crime. One Halloween night under Colchester Bridge, there was a group of people drinking alcohol. Suddenly, a bright light appeared, like lightning, which the entire area noticed. He heard screaming coming from the left side. A few minutes later, everyone began to inquire about what was happening. As a result, 3 bodies of teenagers hanging from a bridge, their entrails spilling out. Asterisk, he had been missing for a year on the same Halloween day. The same thing happened the previous year, but these were 6 victims killed in the same way. Since that day, the people have been on strike, and they will not commit a crime against this bridge or Halloween night. Asterisk, but from time to time, after deciding on the man's story, there were some notable people who would come forward, and I decided that it started at the bridge late at night. Fortunately, those who found him never returned. The strangest thing about the man's story is that the locals and residents of the area insist on his presence, while the police, anonymous sources say, are actually a rabbit man. Years of investigations and inquiries have failed to yield any evidence that would lead them to the culprit. Asterisk, an explosion occurred when the officer working there stopped the work at the appointed time, as they were able to complete their work and, no matter how successful, capture the ghost. Asterisk, for your information, people who call themselves ghost hunters or paranormal investigators actually try to visit this area, right? But the government has banned any fans from visiting it in order to close the case once and for all.